Good evening and welcome to Nature's the Thing. Nature's the Thing is hosted by Jamie Petitti of the Chickasaw National Recreational Area. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, this is Neil Mayo in the Channel 7 studios, asking you to shop Maury County first. Maury County merchants are here and able to serve you at all times. A Channel 7 reminder, shop Maury County first. Thank you.
Hello, are you enjoying the cold weather we're having? Did you enjoy the ice and snow? Well, a lot of people love it. They really do. I can't say I like winter, but of course I realize that no winter, no summer. So we must have it. That's just part of the facts of life, of living in an area where you have 4 distinct seasons. And I think I might enjoy it a little bit more, enjoying the warmth of your house and putting on extra clothes, if I didn't worry so much about the animals outside. But I just can't help it. You read the chill factor and you look outside and see the wind blowing, and you just wonder, how can anything possibly survive this cold? So I sort of have a checklist of things to worry about. And as I study a little bit more about it and observe, you realize that these do survive. There are the survivors that stay here during the winter. First of all, let's start with the birds. We have some pictures that we took just a few minutes ago, just behind the Nature Center. Now, we have an abundance of birds in the park, and the important thing, once you start putting out food, you can't neglect going out every day. When it's snowing, you have to brush off the places where you feed them and keep them brushed off, because the snow covers. The day it was snowing so hard, it kept us busy keeping the grain uncovered so they could get to it. Now, there's several of the tiny birds that come to these feeders, like the gray juncos and the little chickadees. And the little chickadees are so tiny you wonder how in the world they can make it. Well, one thing in their favor, they do find shelter in crevices and hollow limbs, and they are a bird of the woods. You don't find them out on the plains because they're so lightweight, the winds would toss them about. But they choose to stay here all year round, like our little gray juncos, the tufted titmice. We don't see many cardinals this year. I don't know why, but we haven't had very many around the feeders. A few brown thrashers. Now, there's several of the beautiful, bright, red-headed woodpeckers that have been coming to these logs to feed. We've been putting out suet, because normally, of course, they will burrow under the barks of trees and find their insects. You don't commonly come to the feeders for seeds. But we just couldn't get a picture, a real good picture of the red-headed woodpeckers. They were just too scary this day. But it's fun to watch them. And another important thing, of course, we have the advantage of having a creek that's flowing right by where they can get water. But the important thing is to keep water available. You put it out, and it's frozen in just a few minutes, and it does keep you busy, but they do have to have water also provided for them if you put out feeders in your yards. Now, when we talk about these birds that stay here versus the ones that migrate and go to warmer places, these birds find places of shelter. Now, when we talk about shelter, we talk about a nice, warm, snug home with heat in it. But the places they call shelter are really just the woods. The woods behind the Nature Center, this typical deciduous forest, the trees that drop their leaves but stand as a windbreak. Now, this old snag, our old dead tree, is very, very important. I'm sure it shelters a lot of wildlife. A lot of holes in it where different kinds of birds can go in and out, and other kinds of animals. And that's why there's a certain amount of dead timber left in this area of the park, because it has to be to provide shelter for the animals. Can't say it's warm, but they fluff their feathers out. Now there was a little glimpse of the red-headed woodpecker. White, just beautiful white underneath its wings, and the bright, solid red heads. Now these birds are just flying in and out, coming to the feeders. They look fat. They're really not. They're having a hard time of it because just a few weeks ago there was such an abundance of food, we would put food out and wouldn't attract any birds at all because the natural food was there, but it's covered now with ice and snow. So we have plenty of birds coming to the feeders. They need our help now, this time of year, more than any. The larger birds of prey, they are still around, the owls and the hawks. It's pretty hard for them to get a square meal, too, because the little field mice and rodents will burrow in and only come out when they have to try to find something to eat. So many times they go hungry. Lots of times as you drive down Interstate 35, you see a lot of hawks on posts. And the explanation we had of that by Phil Henderson, who was here a couple of weeks ago, was that the tall prairie grasses that are between the fence posts and the highway provide food and shelter for the rats and mice. And so that's where they do most of their hunting. The area behind them is barren and usually plowed over this time of year. So they'll find that a good place to find a square meal. Now, the birds, as we said, will fluff their feathers out and have layers of air caught in between the layers of the feathers and can keep warm up to a point. And they have just learned to survive. They're very active also, and I think part of this activity keeps them going. Sometimes when they fly into the windows of the nature center and are stunned, if we don't get to them immediately and bring them into a warm place or cup them in our hands and let them recover with some warmth, they will freeze before they can come to if they are not fatally injured. Now, we went on as we were taking these pictures just a few minutes ago and looked for some tracks in the snow. You can tell what animals have been out. Of course, along the creek, we have noticed the raccoons, and you can see their footprints. They're very easily identified. This looked like rabbit tracks that were going up the hillside. And there's a big cedar tree, or actually two, nearby where rabbits are always found, summer and winter. They seem to like the area beneath the big cedars to raise their young and to find shelter in the wintertime. Now, it's pretty hard for a rabbit to find a square meal in an area like this, all covered with snow. And this just isn't soft snow, but it's crusted over. We had the sleet we had the other day, made it pretty hard. Now, these same cedars provide shelter for many of our songbirds like the cardinals. Many times we'll walk past some of these trees and shrubs, and these birds will whir past our heads. They'll be hiding back near the trunk of the tree. And those berries from the cedars are what have provided food for the hundreds and hundreds of robins that we've seen around town and in the park the last several weeks. Now, these huge flocks of robins are still down in the Flower Park area, and believe it or not, many of them have gotten run over as they've jumped up and crossed the road. Now, the creek, being a flowing body of water, is a sanctuary and a haven for many of the water birds. This morning coming to work, just as we crossed Sycamore Crossing, there were some ducks. They probably had come from some ponds that were frozen over, and they'll just find the creek a good place to stay. Also, this is a good time of year to see the great blue herons. These very large birds, of course, are year-round residents But you see more of them in the winter because they migrate this far south from the north. Now these have a very sharp beak that is actually their tool that they kill their prey with. They just spear their fish. And they have long legs. They stand about 3 feet tall when their head is stretched out. And they will wade the creek and then spear their fish. Occasionally they'll make a miscalculation. Now we have one that's mounted inside the Nature Center, and I didn't know Neil was getting me like this because I was trying to rig this and fool you. But I thought I'd set it out in a more natural environment to get a good look at it. These are beautiful big birds, standing over 3 feet tall, and they're called blue herons. They're actually grayish. Now their heads are white and have black crown patches and plumes that give them a fancy look. And they also have plumes on their lower necks. Now we do see these up and down Rock Creek and Travertine Creek all during the winter. Sometimes just wading in the water and sometimes flying very low following the creek. These are the only herons that stay here in the winter. We do have the little blue and the green herons that are here in the summertime. Occasionally they'll grab a fish that's too big for them to swallow and it gets hung in their throat and kills them. Now, that's pretty bad, isn't it? Now the majority of these arrive in October and November and they're here to about March and April. Although, as I mentioned earlier, some of them are year-round residents. But when many of the lakes and ponds are frozen over, you see many more of the water birds that come to the creeks. We're going to take a break now for some commercials, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Davis Tax Service is located at 108 East Bird on the corner of 2nd and Bird Streets in Davis. Davis Tax Service has been serving your individual tax and bookkeeping needs since 1969. Dedicated to maintaining quality service, this organization is committed to continued professional education of its management and staff. Davis Tax Service recognizes the importance of keeping up with the newest in technological business systems through computerized income tax and accounting programs. At the same time, the members of the Davis Tax Service team continue to provide personal, friendly service.
Swanky Sulphur Bakery, 214 West Muskogee, has been serving Murray County for 60 years. We specialize in rush orders, so give us a call at 622-5100.
Most of these squirrels in the park get up later and later as the weather gets colder and colder. And you see them out hunting for food. Now, as I said, just a few weeks ago, there was such an abundance of food, the acorns and all, but those are all covered with snow. So they'll come to your bird feeders also, eat the grain. We had a very interesting story just a few weeks ago about another squirrel that's quite common around here but rarely ever seen, a flying squirrel. Some people called us and asked us if we would be interested in having one. And we told them that we would like to see it anyway. And they said their cat had caught it and brought it in, and as the man was trying to get it away from the cat, it had bitten him. So they kept it 2 weeks to see that it was all right and didn't have rabies and brought it in. We have this little flying squirrel at the Nature Center. We don't dare turn it loose now because by nature, flying squirrels, and this is a picture of one, you rarely ever get a chance of seeing a flying squirrel in action. Now, they don't actually fly, but they have this extra skin between their front and hind legs in their body that allows them to glide from one tall limb to another or even to the ground. They're very small, about a fourth of the size or even less of a regular squirrel, and coming out only at night when it's very dark. Now, we have this flying squirrel that the people brought down all the way from Noble, Oklahoma. And as I mentioned, we don't dare turn it loose because by nature they hover together, find a hollow tree someplace, and in groups of 15 or 20 snuggle together and spend the winter, coming out at night maybe to eat, but they use the body warmth from one another to keep alive. So we couldn't count on this one finding a place. So we'll have to wait till warm weather. There he is, snuggled up in an old box turtle shell. We thought, what would be a good place to make him a bed? Because in the daytime when the sun's out, he gets too much sunlight in our back workroom where we have him. So we put the little terrapin shell in there and he crawls in it. Now, we know he comes out at night. The people said they could tell he came out at night because they could hear him scampering all over his little cage they had him in. This is a bird cage we're keeping him in. And at night he comes out and cracks his little sunflower seeds and his pecans and eats a big meal and leaves them very neatly in the little cup, so as if to say, please refill, and goes to bed, where he stays very snug all day long. Of course, we lock up at night, never get to see him out. But in a few more weeks, when the weather does get warmer, we'll release him, because he'll be able to make it on his own. Now, some of the animals, like skunks and possums and armadillos, live in burrows in the ground, and that is a pretty good place to be, because underground you get down below the freeze level, and the deeper they go, the warmer they are. We're going to see some of these burrows now. Here's a picture of a mole. And of course, they stay in burrows year-round, and as this isn't the mole. We did have the mole on the other page. This is a typical little woodchuck, and he has an entrance. And most of the burrowing animals do have an entrance where they can come in and out. This is the mole, and they stay there, of course, year-round underground. Have such tiny eyes because they really don't need eyes at all. And they displace enough dirt that they leave a little molehill. You know the story, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. But these animals can keep pretty warm. I suppose this is one of the best places to be. Now, this is an armadillo tunnel leading to the place where the armadillo has given birth to her young. Now, usually the mother has 4 babies, all of the same sex, in January or February. And then by spring, when they can go outside and dig around for their insects, the young are able to go outside with the mother. We still see armadillos out on fairly warm days, digging around when the earth isn't frozen on top. Not in this kind of weather, but in a few more weeks particularly, and 3 or 4 weeks ago we saw armadillos out all during the day. Normally they're nocturnal. Now, they came from the southwest desert where it got so hot in the day they had to burrow underground to be protected from the intense heat. So this nature of living underground equips them to be able to live up here where it gets very cold and it keeps them from freezing. But I think the animals that do live in the underground tunnels and dens and burrows probably are better off than the others. The raccoons find a hollow log a lot of times and will den together with other raccoons to keep warm. But that isn't probably the warmest place in the world. Now, the buffalo, just don't worry too much about them because they are fairly well equipped for cold weather. They face a winter storm head-on because in the front and their head and their shoulders are covered with the thickest fur. So they say you can tell which direction a storm is coming from by the direction the buffalo are standing in. And they use their big, massive skulls and heads just like a snowplow, and they can get down to the grasses below where other animals can't. Many times they will make trails and the other animals will follow. Now you can see how deep the snow is by how far it came up on the head of this buffalo. Now, the buffaloes survived in the open plains, so they don't need windbreaks of the forest. Although in the bison range here, there are lots of cedar trees and other wooded areas, and they have plenty of shelter. Also, they reported the other day that probably this year the buffalo are in the best condition they've ever been in. They've been feeding them alfalfa hay and some high-protein blocks, and they're very well taken care of. So if you drive by and see them and think, oh, those poor buffalo out there, don't worry about them. They're making it just fine, because the buffalo that lived on the open plains didn't have any such care as these do. We're going now to a short film clip of some scenes of a typical deciduous forest. This is the only thing I think that keeps me going in the winter. Seeing these buds on the ends of the twigs where the leaves have dropped off. And at the bottom of the forest floor, you have the snails, and then just a few weeks ago, you had the acorns that were covering the floor of the forest, and all the berries that were providing food and all the grain. But that all changed with the snow. All the foodstuffs for the animals gets covered. The insects here in the picture that we're looking at now are still inside cocoons and inside and under the barks of trees. Of course, some birds have a built-in mechanism that causes them to migrate, while others hang on, and these we call the survivors. But the quest for food goes on regardless. And so the hawks in the day and the owls at night have to keep ever alert for food, because not hibernating, their body requires they eat. Now, on certain days in the winter, you do find a few lizards and snakes out, and of course they find mice and rabbits, and they usually make it through the winter, maybe a little lank. Here come some raccoons out of a hollow log hunting for food. They normally come out only at night, particularly in the summer, but in the winter they'll come out when the sun is warming. We've even had a raccoon that's been coming and eating the birdseed. Here's a woodchuck that's hibernating. Now, their metabolism goes down and their heart beats so low, they live on their stored fat and don't have to eat all winter. But here's just a typical cold-looking scene in the woods in the winter times. It looks absolutely lifeless, like nothing can live there. Yet nature has provided ways and means for at least most of the species to survive. As we mentioned, the squirrels hover close to the bark of a tree and come out later and later, particularly in this kind of weather. The cold clouds of winter. You see the tracks in the snow where some of the animals have ventured forth hunting for food. Now, the skunks that burrow and the opossums that'll find a burrow or den, the foxes and coyotes, they don't truly hibernate. They will go into dens and into burrows, but they do have to come out to eat. They can go many, many days without food, but they do have to finally come out. The shadows cast by the trees on the snow are really beautiful. We can't say that winter is bad. It's not up to us to put labels on it. And as I close, I'd like to share with you a beautiful poem by Robert Frost about the winter woods, stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though, and he will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year, he gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. This closes our program for today. We hope by next week all the snow is gone, even though the woods are beautiful on a snowy evening. So until next week, goodbye.
Never lived in a great big city, never wanted to. Rather live in a place like Sulphur with folks like me and you. Rather live where the sunshine, clean water and good times. Of all the places that I've known, I'd make Sulphur home. There's a bank right here in Sulphur that's owned by folks you know. Folks who have a big commitment to helping Murray County grow. Friends that you grew up with who'll help you do what you want to do. At Sulphur Community Bank, you've got friends who always will be standing by you.
Member FDIC.